High up in the Andes Mountains, the ruins of an empire are still standing, absolutely defiant against time. And their stone walls, they're so massive and so precise, it's like they're holding a secret. This isn't just about building. This is about encoding an entire worldview into solid rock. Today, we're going to unlock the blueprint of the Inca Empire, an empire built not with mortar, but with sheer mastery. Okay, let's just dive right in. Get a good look at this single stone. It has 12 different angles, and it fits perfectly, and I mean perfectly, against 11 other stones. You couldn't slip a piece of paper between them, let alone a credit card. And this brings us right to the heart of the mystery we're exploring. How on earth did they do this? How did they create these seamless, perfect joints? And maybe more importantly, why did they build this way? Well, to answer that, we have to start with the most fundamental element of their entire civilization, the stone itself. For the Inca, stone wasn't just a material. It wasn't just stuff to build with. It was the medium they used to express power, status, and their sacred connection to the earth. But, not all Inca stonework was the same. For the everyday stuff like houses or farming terraces, they used a style called perca. This was basically rough-shaped fieldstones held together with a simple clay mortar. It was practical, it got the job done. But for anything important, we're talking royal palaces, temples, major state buildings, they brought out their signature polygonal masonry. These are those finely dressed, interlocking stones fitted with that baffling precision. One style was just for living, the other was a massive statement of power. And this is the ultimate expression of that high-status stonework. You're looking at Sacsayhuaman, the incredible fortress temple that overlooks the capital, Cuzco. Some of these stones weigh over 100 tons. The scale is so immense that it's called cyclopean, as if only giants, only a cyclops could have built it. But it wasn't giants. It was an empire of absolute master masons. So how did they pull it off? Well, the process was incredibly laborious, but the tools were surprisingly simple. First, they'd quarry these massive blocks right out of the bedrock using bronze pry bars. Then came the dressing part. And get this, without iron tools, they would just patiently pound the blocks into shape using harder river stones as hammerstones. The final step was the fitting, a painstaking process of trial and error. Just try to imagine hoisting a multi-ton block, checking the fit, lowering it back down, chipping away a tiny fraction, and then doing that again and again and again. And don't just take my word for it. A Spanish chronicler, José de Acosta, he actually saw this happening back in 1589. He wrote that they had to try the fit many times. This quote just perfectly captures the immense patience and the sheer manpower this required. It wasn't about some lost advanced technology. It was about an almost unbelievable obsessive dedication to perfection. Okay, so we've seen how they handled a single stone. Now let's zoom out a bit and see how those stones came together to create a distinct imperial style. The Inca developed this architectural blueprint that was instantly recognizable all across their vast empire. It was like their brand, stamped in stone. And this imperial style had a very clear DNA. You had simplicity of form, which, makes it easy to replicate. You had symmetry in the layout, giving everything a sense of order and balance. And, of course, solidity, to make sure it would last for centuries. You'll also notice their walls often lean inward just a little bit. That's called battered, and it added a lot of stability. And then there was their signature shape, the trapezoid. It is absolutely everywhere in their work. In the doorways, the windows, the little niches in the walls, it's always wider at the base and narrower at the top. Now, this cool shape wasn't just for looks. Some experts argue it provided seismic stability in a region that gets a lot of earthquakes. But more than anything, it was the essential mark of the empire. When you saw that trapezoid, you knew you were in Inca territory, period. So how did they arrange all these individual buildings? Well, they used a fundamental unit, kind of like an architectural Lego brick for their towns and cities. This repeatable module was called the cancha. So a cancha is pretty simple. It's an enclosure. It's got a few single-room buildings arranged around a central open courtyard, and the whole thing is contained within a surrounding wall. This simple, elegant design was incredibly versatile. It could be a humble family home, it could be a block in a town, or you could even scale it up to form the basis of a grand palace or a temple. With that blueprint in mind, we can now zoom out to the grandest scale of all, the capital city, Cuzco. For the Inca, this wasn't just a place to live. Oh no, it was designed as a sacred model of their entire universe. Now, it's really important to understand that Cusco was different from other ancient capitals. It wasn't some sprawling commercial hub like the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan. Instead, it was what's called an axis mundi, the sacred pivot point, the center of the world around which their entire universe revolved. It was a city built for ritual and for administration, the heart of the empire in every single sense. And what's just fascinating is how the Inca layered all these different organizational ideas right on top of their capital. So the city itself was a map of their empire, divided into 4 quarters. It was also split into 2 social halves, Hanan, or upper, and Hurin, the lower half. Some historians even suggest its core was laid out in the symbolic shape of a puma. And then weaving through all of this was an invisible sacred geometry. This geometry was the ceque system. Think of it as a series of invisible lines, like rays, shooting out from the Coricancha, the great temple of the sun at the city's heart. These lines connected hundreds of sacred shrines, or huacas. And a huaca could be a rock, a spring, a mountain, you name it. This system organized not just physical space, but also time, rituals, and even social obligations. It was a sacred map laid right over the physical landscape. Okay, let's do our final zoom out. So, having perfected their architectural style and their sacred city plan, the Inca then projected this blueprint across thousands of miles of conquered territory. Architecture became their ultimate tool for unification and control. And what's just incredible is how fast this building boom happened. It was mostly the work of 3 successive rulers. It really kicks off around 1438 with Pachacuti. He's the great visionary who rebuilt Cuzco and basically set the imperial style. His successors, Topa Inca and Huayna Capac, just kept that momentum going, stamping this architectural brand all across the Andes. This unbelievable achievement was definitely not lost on the Spanish conquistadors when they arrived. They really only had one comparison for building on this kind of scale: the Romans. As one Spaniard wrote in 1534, the walls of Sacsayhuaman were more worthy of being seen than anything the Romans had ever built. I mean, that is just incredibly high praise, and it really captures the awe these structures inspired. And there's really nowhere that all these ideas come together more perfectly than right here, at Machu Picchu. It was likely a royal estate built by the great Pachacuti, and it is the ultimate synthesis of everything we've talked about. You see the master stonework, you see the imperial blueprint of trapezoids and conchas, and you see an unparalleled connection to the sacred landscape, with sightlines that were intentionally built to frame sacred mountain peaks. It's Inca architecture in perfect harmony with nature. And that brings us to a final, really powerful thought. The Inca Empire, this vast political machine, was actually remarkably brief. It flourished for less than 100 years before the Spanish conquest. And yet their architecture has endured for over 5 centuries, resisting earthquakes, resisting the elements. So it really leaves us with this question. What does it mean when a civilization writes its history, its power, and its very identity, not in books, but in solid stone?